Thanks for coming. My name is Scott Davenport. I'm in the Student Affairs Office at the medical school. And tonight the goal is just to give you kind of a 50,000-foot overview of the residency application process and what to expect through your fourth year as far as the process in applying to a residency match, the Step 2 exam, and then we'll have a student perspective. And we'll also, the two subjects will overlap quite a bit. And as I said, then at the end we'll have a student perspective also about the entire process. So I'll get us started talking about the residency match. So your class's match will be on March 20th, 2015. And hopefully for everyone during that match day, this is the reaction you have also when you open up your envelope and find out where you actually matched. So March 20th is the third Friday in March. That'll be your match day. You do not find out if you matched on that day. You actually find out previously in the week, on that Monday of match week, you find out if you matched. On that Friday then is where you find out where you actually matched to. So you don't go into the day not knowing if you matched or not. You already know. March 26, 2014 is the kickoff of the process for your class. So on March 26, we will have an all-day residency workshop for your class. The AM portion of that day will be taken up by activities involving your faculty advisors, and then the second half of the day will involve activities centered around the residency application process. So on that day, we take you down from the 50,000 foot, we take you down to the 10,000 foot level, really, and give you a lot more detail about the process, deadlines, important things you need to do, forms, and all that good stuff. So March 26th, you'll be excused from your rotations for that day, and your whole class will get together and kick off the year-long process. So what is the year-long process? It's broken up into 3 stages. You have prep. That'll take place during, actually beginning now, really, through the summer of your fourth year. In the fall, you will have your application time, and then into the winter is when you'll interview and match. So prep. What can you do starting now during the prep portion of this process? You can begin gathering certain documents and pieces of your application, particularly your letters of recommendation. You can start gathering those now. You have options for that, and I'll talk to about that in a minute. But you can begin gathering letters of recommendation. I will post for your class a copy of the application for residency, so you can begin looking at that, so you know what actually goes on the actual application. You can also use that to help create a CV for yourself. So that's something else you can start doing now is creating a CV. This will come in handy when it comes time to actually complete your application, and it'll also come in handy when you ask for letters of recommendation or if an individual offers to write a letter for you. It's nice to have a CV you can hand over to them. Another thing you probably want to start doing now is, if you haven't already, go into eValue and start reviewing all your evaluation comments from your rotations, and particularly make sure, you have comments. Some rotations won't include comments. Your surgical subspecialties, those 2-weekers, won't. But most of your others should include some sort of comments for you, so please start reviewing those. And you also can start, if you don't need to know what specialty you're going to apply to right now. And certainly when it comes time to begin applying, you can apply to multiple specialties. But really, if you don't know, now is the time to really start thinking about what you want to do as far as a specialty. And a great resource will be the departments and your faculty advisors to start talking to them about narrowing down what you want to do and what you want to apply to. If you do know the specialty you want to apply to, you can actually begin now to think about programs you might want to apply to. And again, the departments will be helpful in that, and we'll talk a little bit more about how you go about narrowing down that list in a little bit. So those are some of the things you can start doing now. You can also start thinking about your electives away, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. And Keisha, when she comes up, we'll talk a lot more about that and show you on the calendar a good time to start planning in your resources for that. The third phase then, or the second phase then, is your application. You can begin applying to residency on September 15th is when you actually will begin applying to residency. If you're applying to ophthalmology, you actually will begin a couple weeks sooner. On early September, late August is when you'll begin applying to ophthalmology. But all the other specialties, you'll begin applying to them on September 15th. Once you begin applying, after that, you're going to move into the interview season. Your interview season is going to run from October through the first half of January, with the majority of your interviews taking place in November and December in that time period. And then you move into the springtime, and that's when you actually match. So you'll create your rank list beginning in January. You'll have them finalized mid-February, and then you will have your match in March. Again, there are some small differences depending on a couple of the specialties, but generally that's the timeline that you're going to follow. So one of the things you want to start thinking about now is what match you actually will participate in. There actually are 4 different matches. The 3 that we listed up top are often referred to as early matches, simply because you match using those matches earlier. As simple as that. I won't go into a lot of detail about the military match, other than let you know there is a military match for individuals in the military and who want to match into a military residency. They hold their own match and their own process for that. Traditionally, we have 4 or 5 students a year that participate in that. But the other 2, the AUA and the San Francisco match. AUA is the American Urological Association. They run the match for urology. So if you're applying to urology, you apply and match through the AUA. If you are applying to ophthalmology, you apply to ophthalmology and match in ophthalmology through the San Francisco match. It's called the San Francisco match. Those are early matches. As I mentioned earlier, ophthalmology, you will begin applying a little bit sooner. And certainly for both of those, you submit your rank list and you match in January. So you match a good month and a half earlier than what you do for the main match. The main match is down at the bottom. That is the NRMP. That stands for National Residency Matching Program. Every single U.S. senior, including yourselves, will participate in the NRMP match. Even if you are participating in the AUA for urology, or if you're applying to ophthalmology and participating in the San Francisco match, you also will participate in the NRMP match. And I'll explain why that occurs in a few minutes. So basically, if you're applying to ophthalmology or urology, you will have 2 matches. So when you match, you're going to have an application. Your application is actually taken up, is made up by a number of different pieces. No one piece is the deciding factor. Programs definitely take your application in a holistic review, and they'll look at every single component of your application. Now, saying that, a lot of programs will have base levels that they're going to require their applicants to be. So please be aware of that. But basically, your application is made up, and we'll just go around the circle, and I'll give you more information about each of these. At the 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock time there is letters, so your letters of recommendation. You can get as many letters of recommendation as you please. You'll be able to assign up to 4 letters to any individual program, but you can get as many as you want, and you'll have total control over those letters and where they are assigned to in the application system. So you can get 10 letters, use only 4, and not use 6 of those altogether. You can just get 4 letters and use the same 4 letters if you want to, or you can mix and match and send these 4 to that program, these 4 to that program, and so forth. So you have total control over your letters. I mentioned you can begin getting letters now. There are different ways to do that. If you choose to get one now, pretty much your letter writer is going to create it now. They'll send it into my office, and it'll get filed away. Your other option is to have a letter writer start the letter now, file it away themselves, and then you meet with them again during the summer, and they'll finalize the letter. And then the third option is to ask the letter now, and then meet it with your letter writer again, and have them start it at that point. Or I guess there's actually probably a fourth way, is they could submit a letter now, and then if they want to, they can update it before the application season starts. But basically, the best practice is if you think you're going to be able to get a strong letter from somebody, go ahead and ask them for it now. You're fresh in their minds. If they don't want to write it now, they don't have to. They can begin to write it now. You can meet with them later. A lot of people want to get letters specific to a specialty. So if you don't know what specialty you're going to apply to now, certainly they can start the letter now. You can meet with them again later in the summer when you've defined your choice, and they can update the letter or finish the letter at that point and get it in. So you have different options, but certainly you can definitely begin asking and trying to get those letter recommendations now. And it's a good idea to do it now because you're fresh in a lot of their minds. The next of the medical school transcripts, those are pretty self-explanatory. You will have a set of your medical school transcripts sent to every residency program you apply to. It is one of the few things in the application that you'll send off the programs that is actually updatable. So you can have a set in the system when you initially apply, and then a month later, you've gotten a couple more honors, have come back in on your transcript, you want everyone to know about it, you can have an updated set put back into the system that goes out to all your programs. So your medical school transcripts will be updatable in the system. Then down at about the 5 o'clock hand there is USMLE. Those are your USMLE transcripts. Those will be primarily your Step 1 scores when you initially apply. And we'll go into a lot more detail about this. Dr. Becker will, and Keisha definitely will also, about the intricacies of releasing your STEP scores to programs. Basically, when you apply to a program, that residency program will get a copy of your most up-to-date transcripts as they look the moment you apply. So whatever's on the transcript, they will see. So primarily for most of you, that's going to be your Step 1 score, because you're probably going to take your Step 2 score or your Step 2 exams after you've applied to programs. So they'll have your Step 1 score for sure. And then you'll have control if you want to release your Step 2 score to them at a later date, if it's not already on that original transcript. So you can go back in the system after you've taken your exam, you got a 270 on Step 2, you want all your programs to know about it, you can go back in the application system and have an updated set sent to them so all your programs will get your Step 2 score. But certainly your Step 1 score is going to go to every program you apply to. Photo. Everyone wants a photo of you, and we'll actually have a photo shoot for your class at the beginning of the summer. So we'll bring in a photographer. We'll do it over a couple days in the summer to give you guys a chance to come in and get your photo taken. And we'll upload and put those in the application system for you. Personal statement. You all will have to write personal statements about yourself and why you want to be a X. Fill in the blank. If you're applying to one specialty, you only need one personal statement. If you're applying to two specialties, you'll want two personal statements. Obviously, from what I'm saying, you can apply to multiple specialties, so you don't have to limit yourself to one specialty. So if you are undecided when you begin applying to residencies, you can apply to multiple specialties. Certainly when it comes time to submit your rank list, and you probably want to, at that point, have more finalized your choice about what specialty you want to go into. But applying to multiple specialties is very common, and a lot of applicants will do that. But for personal statements, you're going to need one personal statement per specialty. So if you're only applying to one specialty, you need one personal statement. It's only 1 page long, single space, 10-point font, and it's going to take the longest for you to complete out of all the pieces of your application. I guarantee you, it's going to take a long time to write. So that is something, if you want to, you can actually begin thinking about now. I'm going to send a link out to your class after we give these presentations. That's going to give you a link to our residency information page. And we have sample personal statements on there, and we have some resources for you to use to help create your personal statements. But certainly feel free, and as I go through this, I'll mention a lot of stuff, but I want you guys to feel free to also Google or visit other schools' sites. Every school will have their own guides and everything. We're not going to say ours is the best. We definitely like ours, but please feel free. A lot of schools will have samples and a lot of information out there, particularly for your personal statement, because every medical student across the country is going to struggle with that. So it does take a long time to write. You definitely can start thinking about that. And then CAF stands for Common Application Form. That is an application. That is 12 to 15 pages. Of course, it's electronic, all based. You don't need to finish it in one sitting. You can start it and go back in and keep on completing it. But that is your basic application. That is, who are you? What is your education? What is your work experience? What is your research experience? What is your volunteer experience? List your publications, and so forth. So, and what makes it common is once you complete the application and you submit it to begin applying to programs, it locks. So you won't be able to go in and edit that application after you begin applying to programs. So it'll lock, and that's what makes it common. So every school that you apply to will have the same application form. And then up at top is the MSPE. MSPE stands for Medical Student Performance Evaluation. And the MSPE is made up of 3 primary parts. It's made up by a part that you create. It's made out by a part, well, actually, you create the entire thing, truthfully. but you write part of it. Your advisor writes a summary, and then there's feedback from your rotations that goes in it also. That's why I suggested that you go in and start looking at your evaluations from your rotations. Not all the comments from your rotations go into the MSPE. If you see your evaluations, you'll notice there's a box that is titled Comments for Dean's Letter /MSPE. The Dean's Letter is the old name for the MSPE. That is what will go in here, not your constructive feedback for you, but the comments for your Dean's Letter. So the Dean's Letter is made up of what's called a unique characteristics. That's the opening paragraph. You actually will write that paragraph. Then it's made up of an academic history section, where when did you start medical school, what's your anticipated grad date, did you take any leave of absences, did you have any academic difficulties, did you extend your grad date. Those are a lot of yes/no answers. Then the majority middle section is made up of all the comments, or the MSPE comments, from your rotations, along with the course title and the grade. And then at the end, there's a summary that's written by your faculty advisor. So you will meet with your faculty advisor at least once during the summer to help create this thing. But as we like to say, you've actually have been writing your MSPE since the moment you walked into medical school, because there's nothing in the performance evaluation that you don't already know or you don't already have access to. You will even write part of it. So the MSPE is a large part of the application. That doesn't go out with your initial application, actually. That will go out on October 1st. That's a national date that all MSPEs across the country get sent out. So all medical schools send them out on the same date. So that won't go out with your initial application if you apply before October 1st, but it'll go out on October 1st to all your programs. So how many programs do you apply to? It's a little different from medical school. About the number of programs you apply to. This is a small graph. This is taken from numbers from 2 years ago. So the graduating class of 2012, these numbers are from. But generally, it gives an idea historically how it looks. But so 2 years ago, medical students from the University of Minnesota Medical School who are applying to family medicine applied to an average of 16 family medicine programs. Students applying to general surgery applied to an average of 23. And then students applying to orthopedic surgery applied to an average of 69 orthopedic surgery programs across the country. So why the disparity? We generally break residency programs into two different categories. We have a category we call competitive residency programs, and we have a category we call less competitive residency programs. The reason one is more competitive than the other is strictly numbers. They're smaller programs. Orthopedic surgery programs across the country, in this example, they're a lot smaller than family medicine programs across the country. On average, an orthopedic residency program will have 3 spots available each year. Family medicine programs, a single family medicine program might have 10 spots open in the match. So in order to apply to enough spots, open spots, you need to apply to a lot more competitive specialties because they're simply smaller. Competitive specialties, other than orthopedic surgery, is general surgery we consider competitive, all the surgical subspecialties, dermatology, radiology, and anesthesiology we consider competitive, simply because they're smaller programs. You'll need to apply to more programs, and so forth. The number one reason anyone doesn't match every year has to do with rank list size. Every year the NRMP, the matching program, looks at the reasons someone didn't match, and they draw the conclusion that if that individual had ranked 1 or 2 more programs on their list, they would have matched into one of those programs. So rank list size does matter. So in order to create a rank list size that's large enough to help your match percentages, people applying to competitive specialties will apply to a lot more. So in this example, orthopedic surgeons applied to 69. Maybe they got 20 interview offers. Maybe they went to 15 of those, and maybe they only really liked 10 that they'd be willing to go to. So they had a rank list size of 10. Someone who has something less than that, as you can see, who might only rank 5, the number of spots that they're able to actually match into is much smaller. So rank list size does matter when trying to match. Okay, ERAS. ERAS, that is the Electronic Residency Application System. It's run by the AAMC, and that is the system you will use to apply to residency. You will use it for all specialties except ophthalmology. Ophthalmology is run by the San Francisco Match. They have their own application system. So traditionally, we have 7 or 8 students apply to ophthalmology. Ophthalmology runs through paper. So anyone interested in ophthalmology, you will actually gather your application materials. You'll mail them into the San Francisco Match, and then they make copies and disperse them to the programs that you want to apply to. But all the other specialties, including urology, use the ERAS, the Electronic Residency Application System, to apply to programs. It's a lot like AMCAS. Web-based, you have total control of all the materials in there. But just to make aware, San Francisco Match does not use that. There are 3 different types of residency spots. There's preliminary, there's advanced, and there's categorical. So we'll start down at the bottom. Categorical is the most general. That's what the majority of students will go into. So a categorical residency is all the years of residency combined into one. So you'll start, we'll take example, internal medicine is all categorical. You start day 1 at that program, you continue right through it, right through graduation from that residency program. Some programs, though, are advanced programs. They start in the PGY 2 year. So if you match into an advanced residency program, you won't start that until July 1st, 2016, 1 year after you graduate from medical school. So what do you do for that year? Well, that's where the preliminary year comes in. You'll need to also match into a preliminary or transitional year. These are 1-year programs that you match into. You complete that year, and then you go to your advanced program. So individuals who apply to and match into an advanced program actually, again, will have 2 matches. They'll need to apply to and match into a preliminary program for that first year, and also the advanced program. Now the advanced programs are a lot less common than the categorical. Advanced programs primarily are the more highly competitive. Orthopedic surgery, urology, ophthalmology, some dermatology programs, some radiology programs are advanced. Not all of them are. You might find categorical dermatology programs, but you also might find advanced dermatology programs. Ophthalmology and urology are all advanced programs. So if you're applying to those, you also will be required to apply to PGY 1 years. And that goes back to what I was saying earlier, how every U.S. senior will apply and participate in the NRMP match, and that is why. So if you're applying to urology or ophthalmology, they're advanced programs. So you'll participate in the San Francisco urology match, but you also need to apply and participate in the NRMP match to get that preliminary PGY 1 year. So you actually, again, you'll have 2 matches. But the majority of individuals, 80+%, will match into categorical programs, and you don't have to worry about all that preliminary or advanced program stuff. All right, we're going to talk a little bit about electives away, and Keisha will get into a more detail here than I will. But it's something you want to start thinking about now. Electives away are often called audition electives, primarily because you're going to do them. Obviously, at programs you want to go to residency or are interested in matching into residency at. And that is why they're called auditions. So you're going to go there, and they're really going to judge your performance. And if you do well, that's going to be a huge asset to help you match into that program. Not everyone needs to do an elective away. They are not required, but for certain specialties, they're recommended. And Keisha will help you. We'll explain a little bit more on that. But I just put a couple links up there where you can find more information. Again, these will all be emailed out, so I'll make sure you have the links. There's a national clearinghouse run by the AAMC called the Visiting Student Application System, VSAS. It's a national clearinghouse where the majority of medical schools across the country, including us, put in all their electives, and then students can go in and apply to take an elective away at another school through that system. Not every school across the country uses it. Mayo has their own system, and some other schools don't use it also. If those are the cases, you have to use whatever process that they have. But you will need to start thinking about materials that you might want to gather if you're interested in doing a elective away. And I have to write these down because I can never remember what they actually are. So I'm going to list them, and I'll tell you where you can find these things. And again, we'll get this all out to you guys, and we'll post it on the web. But rest assured, we'll make sure you guys are able to gather all these materials. So there'll be an application in VSAS, and schools might also have their own individual application you'll need to fill out also. But on top of that, a lot of schools will ask for a copy of your transcripts. You can get those from One Stop. If you're familiar with the One Stop process online, you can get copies of your transcripts. Immunization, your MyU portal or Boynton Health Services can print it off also. So your immunizations need to be up to date. They'll want proof of that. HIPAA compliance, mask fit, background study, proof of malpractice insurance, Step 1 score, letter of good standing, and some of them even want a letter of recommendation. The curriculum department here will help you with all that stuff. So they have proof of malpractice insurance for you. They have proof of HIPAA. We have proof that you completed your mask fitting. Of course, we have your Step 1 scores. So the curriculum department will help you gather all those materials. But it's something you want to start thinking about now if you're interested in doing elective away. At least where those materials can be found so you're not scrambling at the last minute to meet a deadline in order to apply for an elective away. Electives away are also very good to get letters of recommendation from. So a lot of students, if you're going to do an elective away, you will probably do them late spring and during the summer semester. So late spring, your third year, summer semester, your fourth year. This gives time before you begin applying to residency for you to obviously introduce yourself to the residency through the elective, but also to get letters of recommendation and also comments out of those electives that can then be put into your MSPE or your performance evaluation that will get sent out to all your residency programs. All right, money. It definitely costs money to apply to residency. It's a lot more expensive than what it was to apply to medical school. And I don't want to scare anyone, but we want to be transparent and forthcoming so you can prepare. It can cost anywhere between $500 and $10,000. Now, $10,000 is the extreme, so don't worry about that. For the majority of people, it's going to be somewhere in between that. But certainly, it does cost money. Not only does it cost money to apply to programs, they'll hit you with fees. There's fees to register. There's fees to release your USW transcripts. The University of Minnesota has a fee to release your medical school transcripts. But then on top of that, you're going to have travel, airplane costs, hotel rooms, rental cars maybe. You might want to buy some new clothes, new shoes, and so forth. So there is definitely a cost to this entire process, so please be aware of that. The financial aid office does provide some assistance for you, and there are some additional financial aid options out there for you, and they'll provide you with that information when the time comes. But if you want to start preparing yourself now, you are forewarned. So, going back to the theme of what you can do right now, these are your best resources for applying to residency. I underline departments because I believe the departments here are the #1 resource to help you apply to residency. Not only will they be a great resource to help you strategize an overall strategy for applying to residency, they'll help you select programs to apply to. So pretty much you want to be able to get into the departments if you haven't already. You know what you want to apply to. I strongly suggest starting to familiarizing yourself with the department and particularly the residency director. Not necessarily to apply here, even if you're not applying here. The residency directors expect to meet everyone that's going to be applying to their specialty. So maybe at least a couple times if you have the opportunity. They're a great resource. Another great resource are going to be your faculty advisors. They're going to help you also with your overall strategy for applying to residency. You're going to be required to meet with them at least once in the summer to complete your MSPE, but certainly you're going to want to meet with them a couple more times to review the list of programs you're applying to. They're going to give you great feedback on your application, on your personal statement, and all that stuff. Plus, as practicing physicians and faculty here, they have contacts in all the different specialties, so they can help hook you up with individuals in the different departments. Data and guides. If you're a data person, there is a plethora of data on the match. We'll get links out to your class. The NRMP, the main residency matching program, gathers all sorts of data every year. So you can look at all the data and see what is the average Step 1 score of someone who matches into X specialty for someone who doesn't. What is the average rank list size of someone who matches who doesn't for X specialty and so forth. So there's a lot of data out there. There's also a lot of guides. We sent out to your class the very short guide. That is just, again, a basic introduction to it. But we have a guide we'll give to you in March at the meeting, which has a lot more detail and information for you. But the AAMC puts a guide together. All the medical schools across the country put guides together. If you're applying to ophthalmology, the University of Iowa puts together a fantastic ophthalmology guide for individuals interested in applying to ophthalmology and so forth. So there's a lot of information out there. I suggest in the very short guide, we give you links to some of those. But I strongly suggest just start looking at them and familiarizing yourself with the process and the terms. Careers in Medicine, again, another AAMC run. If you haven't registered for Careers in Medicine, we'll get the link out to your class. You can register yourselves, and you'll have access to a lot of specific information. Current residents and fourth-year students, if you're on rotations with residents or fourth-year students, they're a great resource. Residents, particularly first-year residents, just went through the process, so they're kind of experts on it. And fourth-year students, I would consider probably now experts on the process also. So if you're friends with fourth years, you're on rotation with the fourth years, definitely ask them questions. I guarantee you they're more than willing to help you and answer them for you. And then, as we mentioned earlier, Electives Away is going to be another great resource. You certainly can't do Electives Away at every program that you are going to apply to, but one or two can help. All right, so there we go, 25 minutes, I think, in a nutshell, 50,000 foot. So, any questions about the residency application process? I know it seems like a lot right now, but rest assured, I guarantee you, in March when we have when our full residency meeting, we will really guide you the entire way, step for step, through the process. And even though we'll spit a lot of information out to you between now and then, we will give it back to you over and over again to make sure you guys meet every deadline, get everything in, and have complete applications. So, if you do have questions, again, Scott Davenport, you can email me at any time. I'm happy, or call me. I'm happy to answer any questions you have, or just stop into my office up on the 6th floor. So, next is Marilyn. She's going to talk to you about your Step 2 exam.
So what I'm going to do, I'm going to give you some key facts on your upcoming Step 2 exams, and I'll try not to take too long with this. But what I do want to cover, I want to explain to you what your Step 2 exams are, I want to show you how people here perform in the exams, what the policies are related to taking those exams, think a little bit about when you might want to take them, and then give you information on registering and learning more about each of those exams. So, the great part is that this is your second step to licensure. So, Step 1 was your first step. In Step 2, you have two separate exams, your clinical knowledge and your clinical skills. And you'll take those probably during the summer or partway through year 4. And then Step 3 is after your first year of residency. The clinical knowledge test, quickly, it's a 9-hour test day. The pass level just got increased to 203. It's 8 one-hour test blocks. So it's 1 hour longer than your Step 1 exam. There are about 355 multiple choice questions spread out over those blocks, and some item sets are associated with drug ads or abstracts. And since those drug ads or abstracts are a little bit longer, they reduce the total number of questions in that specific exam block so that you have time to read and then answer the accompanying questions. Here are the main content areas, and I'm showing you this because these are like the big 6-week rotations you would have liked to have completed prior to sitting for Step 2. Not everybody has all of these before they take Step 2. Sometimes people haven't actually done their psychiatry rotation and they study on the side for that. Once in a while, if somebody really gets jammed up in terms of getting these done, they may not have OB or pediatrics. If you take it without having OB or pediatrics, you have to do, good learning on your own. And you'll use the kinds of recommended resources that the rotations have, and you'll read through those on your own, do questions, and do a lot of self-learning. That isn't advised, but I know once in a while does happen even on those bigger rotations. You do not need to have Med 2. You do not need to have urology or emergency medicine or those things. Okay, any questions? Okay, the way the test is written is it's according to physician tasks, so they're asking you about preventive medicine, health maintenance issues, underlying mechanisms of disease, what's the most likely diagnosis, what's my next step in management, etc. So very much is paralleling the kind of work that you're doing in your rotations. For that reason, people really like this exam, especially compared to Step 1, where it felt like it was a lot of discrete facts. This is material that you're comfortable with. In your review, you're going to be picking up weaker areas through practice questions and a little bit of review. It's going to be much different, though, than what you did for Step 1, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So this is how our students do. Consistently above the national pass rate, so we've been at 99% pass rate for the past couple of years compared to 98% nationally. In terms of mean scores, you can see the mean scores on this exam are really high. So for us last year, it was like 36. National was at 237. So right close in there. Okay, before I move on to clinical skills, any questions on clinical knowledge? Okay. Next, clinical skills, the second part of your Step 2 exam. This is a separate exam. It's an 8-hour test day that includes an on-site orientation, patient encounters, and some breaks. And I showed you farther down, it's 12 patient cases where you have 15 minutes with the patient and then 10 minutes to do your notes. Included in your day are 2 breaks, a 30-minute break where you get a light meal that they provide, and then a second 15-minute break. So it's a very structured day. It's like the OSCEs here. You have to travel to one of these test centers in order to take the CS exam. There are discounted hotel rates, and here's the URL for that, and we'll post this presentation so you can see that. These are the content areas that are covered on the exam, so common diseases and problems from these main areas, plus, as you see, they say other. And we'll have more information for this at residency day 2 in terms of really how to be thinking about this exam, how to be preparing for it. Here's how the scoring works. It's a pass-fail score. There are 3 different subcomponents that you yourself will get a score on. It's integrated clinical encounter, data gathering, documentation. So both the standardized patient giving you some ratings on data gathering and physician evaluators evaluating your notes. A huge part of this test is the communication and interpersonal skills. So it's more than just conveying medical knowledge to this patient or just asking questions. It is about the relationship too. That's an area that they've been increasing the importance of lately. And the last area is spoken English proficiency. So how do our students perform? Okay, so we're at 99% pass rate, and now more recently we've been at 98%. Any questions on Step 2 CS? Okay, so what are the policies here? So you need a passing score on each of these exams in order to be eligible to graduate. We have deadlines for taking the exam. CS, it's December 31st. CK, February 1st. When should you take it? So setting your CK date, you're going to take it after you've completed most of those major rotations that we looked at before. You can also determine if a Step 2 score is required for interview invitations in the programs you're interested in applying to. A survey went out about 2 years ago, and it kind of riled all of us up because what it showed was that some programs want a Step 2 score before inviting people to interview. As everything's kind of fallen out now, we kind of see that isn't a big deal for most programs. What it turned out is some of the less competitive programs actually wanted a Step 2 score, and maybe they didn't even want it on everybody. If you had difficulty on Step 1, they might want to see your Step 2 before they invite you, that kind of thing. But if there is a program that you're really interested in, I'd probably check with them to see what their kind of expectations are about those Step 2 scores. You're going to set a performance goal for your Step 2, and charting outcomes of the match, which is something we'll be linking to, gives you the average Step 1 scores for accepted applicants to the residency program, so you can see if you're in the ballpark. You can think about your current level of performance, and for that, think back on how you did on your shelf exams. That'll give you some indication. I'd be thinking about how did I do in relation to the mean. So the mean on the shelf exams is usually like about the low 70s. So if you're above that, that's good. So thinking that way, because sometimes it's hard to interpret those scores. Well, I only got a 75. Well, that's the mean or the above for your class, so that's good. You do need to have dedicated time for your final exam prep. And that will vary according to each person, but it could be maybe a couple weeks, 3 weeks. It could be up to a month if you're really trying to improve your performance over your Step 1. So you look at the residency chart outcomes of the match, you see, oh my gosh, the Step 1 average score is quite a bit higher than what I got on my Step 1. Then you're going to plan on taking Step 2 early. You'll take it, I'd say probably by end of next summer or around end of next summer, so that your score can go in early to residency programs. And they do look at improved Step 2 scores. Those are very important. When you're doing your setting your exam date, also think about other factors that can impact on your prep and your test performance. Specifically for year 4, you don't want to be preparing for this and taking it at the same time that you're flying around to a lot of interviews. It kind of seems like, well, that'd be a good time because I have extra days, this and that. But you're going to be preparing for interviews. You're going to be having your interviews, which takes a lot of energy and focus. And then you really don't have time to prepare for this. Any questions on kind of CK dates? Okay. Your CS exam date, you should set that for some time after you've taken some of those outpatient clerkships, the ambulatory care, family medicine, or emergency medicine, etc. There's also a comprehensive clinical assessment that you're going to be given next summer. They'll actually start offering in the summer. They'll have it offered probably, I'll guess, 8 different days between June and October. You'll just sign up for one of those days. It's a test that's required by the school for you to graduate. It's a pass-fail test, and basically it's a really good practice exam for your CS exam. So it's worth your while to wait till you've taken that test before taking CS. Yeah.
The CCA is not meant to mimic Step 2, but the act of going to see a patient and then writing a note, and then going to see the next patient and then writing a note in rapid succession mimics the format of the test. So your performance on the CCA is not necessarily indicative of what your performance will be like on Step 2, but that block of time in which you're taking the test is similar.
Yes, and that's true to a certain extent. So it does what the CCA, as Keisha said, does give you good experience in the structure of CS. If people come up low on the CCA, which some people do, and then there's the remediation process, sometimes those people actually are at risk for not passing CS. So if you come up low on any one of the stations, I would just double check, like with me, and kind of see where you're at. Okay? and make sure that you're really going to do great prep for your CS exam. How do you register? So, registration process is the same as step 1. You go to that same site. Last time you had to download a certification form, and that certification form you brought to the school. You don't have to do that anymore. You're already in the MBME system, so you'll just, they'll send us the certification form electronically. We just take care of it with the MBME. You don't have to do anything with it. Here are the costs for each of those exams. $580 for CK, $1230 for CS. You sign up for a 3-month eligibility period for CK, as you did for step 1, but for CS, it's a 12-month eligibility period that you have. So you can sign up for that any time, and because some, the sites fill up, they're kind of hard to get, especially if you want to go to Chicago, for example, which is close by. I would probably sign up sooner than later, in case you might want to talk about that a little bit too. To learn more about these, you have your practice materials at the USMLE practice materials site. CK, the tutorial, as you had for step 1. The practice test items are really important because you're going to see those drug ads and abstracts there. And you do want to practice with those. For step 2 CS, there's a lot of information on that USMLE site. Please, 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 please do all those things that are on there, because you have to, if you don't know exactly how you're being scored, what the expectations are and all that, like you'll leave something out just because you didn't realize it, and that could jeopardize your performance. So the content description and general information booklet is 15 pages long. It's really good, easy read. Just kind of read that online. There's a nice video. It takes about 15 minutes. You'll see exactly how everything is set up that day. You'll feel more comfortable as you get in there. You won't have any surprises. There are some sample patient notes, so you see exactly how you're expected to do your note. And there's also an interactive note where you can practice writing a note. Again, you have 15 minutes with the patient and 10 minutes with writing your notes. Sometimes people feel a little bit challenged with that 10-minute time, so I would just take some time ahead of time looking at that. And a lot of people do use the first aid for CS book. They find that helpful to go through too. Okay? Any questions? Okay, good. Well, thank you so much. If you do have any questions, just feel free to shoot me an email. Excited about this.
Okay, with that introduction, I'd better do a really good job.
Oh, you will.
Okay, so I titled this presentation, oh, how do I turn this back on?
It's a video mute button.
There we go. I have to start thinking about what? Because when I was in your shoes last fall, I really just wanted to be the ostrich, like head in the sand. I don't want to think about this. I don't know what I want to go into. You can't make me. And really, like, there's a lot of stuff that you don't need to know all the details about yet, but you need to know what's coming. And so that's what this presentation is designed to do. So this is just the academic calendar. You guys have seen this a bajillion times. Slightly different format here, just laying out when the periods are for reference for you when we go on to the next 2 slides. The star, obviously, where we are right now. So, residency application calendar overview. These are basically fixed events, okay? So the first thing that's coming up this coming March and April, so a few short months from now, is when away rotation applications are due. So if you are somebody who's considering an away rotation, be aware that this spring you're going to need to turn those applications in. So you need to be starting even now to think about, where do I want to do away rotations? what programs am I interested in? What kinds of things are those programs going to require me to give them in order to apply? And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. Next summer is when the applications open for business, so you can start putting things in online. And then next fall is when you're going to submit your application. Then in the winter, interviews, and then match a year from March. So this is kind of the big, broad overview of when things happen. So here are the flexible pieces. And my little red bar on the right didn't really work there. That says request rec letters. Okay? So that's something, like Scott mentioned, that you can even be doing now. If you have an attending that you really got along great with, you did great work, they like you, they may even offer to write you a letter. Great. You can request as many letters as you want from as many letter writers as you want. You don't have to end up using them. I ended up getting more letters than I ended up using, but I knew that I had them if I needed them. And I could ask, since I applied to 2 specialties, I applied to family med and internal med, I got twice as many letters because I needed to be able to have somebody who could say, Keisha's going to be a great family doc, and somebody else who could say, Keisha's going to be a great internist. So if you're applying in multiple specialties, make sure you get strong letters for each specialty. And so if you have lots of people that you've asked to write letters, you can get those more easily. Or sometimes people will be willing to write you 2. So away rotation applications, remember, are due in March and April. That means on the brown bar there, January, February, March, you need to be doing your planning for away rotations. Like Marilyn was talking about with taking Step 2, the gold bars, registering for Step 2 CK and CS can happen as early as this winter, January, February, March. Probably don't want to start taking it until later spring, early summer, maybe even into the fall. I just took CK and CS now. The trick here is that registration piece needs to happen probably by the spring, early summer at the latest, because you want to make sure that you get your dates and your location, because they do fill up. I have classmates right now who are scrambling to try and get CS spots anywhere in the country before the end of the year. Okay? Don't let that happen to you. Register early. The green bar then, related to the brown bar, is completing away rotations. I put that in May through August, and that's basically because you want to have enough rotations under your belt as a third year that you're feeling really solid by the time you get to your away rotations, because you want to shine on your away rotations. You want to really impress people. So make sure that you are clinically facile enough to be able to do that. Okay? But by the same token, don't push them too late, because you want to have them done before you're applying in the fall. So, do I need to do an away rotation? For me, applying to family med and internal med, no. There was no reason for me to do an away rotation. It wasn't expected. People might actually have thought it was a little weird if I had done an away rotation, unless I was really planning to move someplace else. For some other specialties, though, the competitive ones, ENT, ortho, neurosurge, those kinds of specialties, it's really pretty expected that you're going to do an away rotation, or 2. So talk to 4th years, or talk to maybe interns or 2nd-year residents in those specialties, and find out, like, what are people going to have expected me to do in order to get into this specialty? Do I need to do away rotations? Don't I? If you know that you want to move for residency, especially if you're considering someplace, say, on the East Coast, doing a rotation in, say you're thinking, maybe I want to move to Boston or New York or something, I don't know. Do a rotation in one of those places. Check out one of the cities that you're interested in. I think sometimes, especially on the East Coast, residency program directors have a tendency to think like, oh, they're in Minnesota. Those Midwesterners just want to stick around the Midwest. They're not serious about my program. If you've done an away rotation on the East Coast somewhere, they're more likely to take you seriously. It also gives you a chance to get to know not only that program better, but to get to know the area better and see if it really is someplace that you'd like to move if you haven't spent any time there before. So getting started. Start thinking about it this winter, even before VSAS opens for applications. You can do your research on VSAS before you can actually submit an application. Talk to the program director here in the specialty that you're considering about places that you're thinking about. They may have other programs that you should consider applying to for away rotations, or they may have an inside scoop about actually maybe you shouldn't go there because they're crazy or whatever. Okay, so people know things. Use that network. And then you can also ask program directors to contact away rotations on your behalf to kind of get an inside track. May work, may not work, but it's worth a try. Make sure that you are looking up requirements for those away rotations too. If you want to do an away rotation, make sure you know what they need. Do they need a rec letter or two? Do they need your vaccination history? Probably. Do they need vaccine titers? Maybe. You may have to actually prove with vaccine titers that you are immune to Hep B. And if you're not, you're going to have to start the series all over again. So be aware that these things are out there. And if you haven't planned ahead adequately, you're going to get caught unawares and not be able to get stuff done in time. So applying. VSAS, like Scott was talking about, is the central clearinghouse. Not everybody participates in VSAS. Apparently programs in Wisconsin have their own system. I don't know. They just do it that way. So be aware that the program that you're interested in may not be on VSAS. Look at their website. Figure out, do they just want you to contact them directly? What's their deal? Know how to find the information that you need. And just because you apply for an away rotation doesn't mean you're going to get it. U of M students here, we want priority for our rotations, right? Same thing at other medical schools. Their students get priority for their rotations. So it's not until their registration period closes, just like ours, that visiting students get access to those spots. So be aware. And then there may be other people who have got their applications in before you did. So you may not be first in line. You may not get it. Consider applying to multiple programs to give yourself a better chance of getting a spot. Other programs, other schools don't necessarily have rotation schedules that align with ours. So if you have your heart set on doing a rotation at, I don't know, University of Wisconsin-Madison during this 4-week block, but it overlaps 2 6-week rotations here at the U, you may have trouble arranging your schedule around it. So just make sure that you're keeping tabs on our schedule versus the schedule of programs that you're looking at. Also, FYI, an away rotation is not the same thing as a sub-I, a sub-internship, where you're really acting as an intern and having primary responsibility for your patients. Not necessarily a bad thing, just be aware of what you're registering for. Step 2, this is just some basics. Marilyn went over all this already, so I'll skip over that. So does Step 2 matter? Well, CS only matters if you fail. If you didn't pass a test that 98% of people pass, that looks really bad. Don't be that person. So as obnoxious as Step 2 CS is, take it seriously. Prepare for it. I don't mean you have to take a full week and do nothing but prepare for CS, but think about it ahead of time. Don't just walk in cold and take the test because you're going to get burned. Like Marilyn said, there may be simple things that you would have done if only you had known that they were looking for them, but you didn't, and then it comes back to get you. So just think about it ahead of time. CK, much like Step 1, the score does matter, especially if you're applying someplace competitive. And again, Step 1 scores matter too. So if your Step 1 score isn't that hot, you need to take that into consideration when thinking about whether you're going to be able to match into a certain specialty. I mean, if you have really poor Step 1 scores and you want to go into orthopedics, ain't going to happen. Figure out a backup plan. If you have middling Step 1 scores, well, okay, let's talk about how we can, work with that. Specifically, figuring out when you should take it. So if you did amazingly well on Step 1, you got I don't know, what's the top score on Step 1? Like theoretical 300? 270. So you got a 270 on Step 1. It doesn't matter when you take Step 2, for the most part, unless you happen to have a program that says they require it. If you did pretty well on step 1, but you're thinking, I want to go into ortho, all right, then make sure that you can demonstrate with your step 2 that you really are a competitive applicant. Take it early, take time off to study, do really well on that. If you're not happy with your step 1 score, then definitely take step 2 early, and definitely make sure that you take time to study so you can really rock it. Make sure you schedule both CS and CK ahead of time. Talked a little bit about that to make sure you get the date or site that you want. And like Marilyn mentioned, consider taking it before interview season, just so you can focus on one thing at a time. Doesn't mean you have to. I took a month this fall, and I was intending to spend that whole time just studying for and taking CK and CS, and then I was going to have a week at the end of that month to just chill, and it was going to be amazing. And then I scheduled 6 interviews during those 4 weeks. So my relaxing time off didn't happen, and I was trying to interview while I was trying to study, and it was super stressful. So I haven't got my scores back yet. I don't know whether that was a really bad idea ultimately or not, but it was certainly stressful. So it's not that you can't do it, but think about what kind of impact that's going to have if you do try to schedule those things all at the same time. Applications and interviews. So at this point in 3rd year, you don't have to figure out where you want to apply. You don't even necessarily have to know what specialty you're going into, but you should at least have some sense of what specialty or specialties you're considering. And the reason for this is because you want to be able to plan. Do I need to think about away rotations, or don't I? What about my step 2 scores? What about research, or does nobody care about research? And then scheduling your rotations to kind of work with your anticipated interview season. So what do I mean by anticipated interview season? This little chart here shows approximately when you can expect interviews to be happening in each of these specialties. And this chart came out of information from my classmates from this year. It's not, completely representative of everybody in my class, but it's a general guide to when you can expect to be having interviews. So if you're going into ophthalmology or urology, your stuff is going to be happening towards the beginning of the season, October, November, December. If you take time off in January, there's no point because your interview season already happened. So if you're going to plan to take time off, you want to have it happen probably November. Conversely, if you are derm or plastics and you're thinking time off, December, January is a better bet for you. Now, what about these people in family med, med peds, gen surg, psych, like interviews October through February? You can't take 5 months off, right? Nor should you. That's ridiculous. But it gives you a sense that you may want to, you're probably more likely to have rotations or interviews that are sprinkled throughout those 5 months rather than being concentrated in one spot. Also, think of these boxes as being less boxes than sort of like tapered, like, I don't know, what shape is this? Like a willow leaf? Tapered at both ends? So you're not going to have as many interviews at the tail ends as you are in the middle. So if you're thinking about taking time off, think about taking it maybe more towards the middle of those time periods. As both Scott and Marilyn mentioned, yeah, this is an expensive proposition. Everybody's going to nickel and dime you on something, and some people it's going to be a lot more than nickels and dimes. So just be aware of it. Plan ahead. Things that I wasn't anticipating having to pay money for, an interview suit. Turns out my med school interview suit doesn't fit anymore. Oops. So just, plan for those things that you weren't expecting to have happen to probably some of them happen. And just be aware. So, things to think about for your schedule. Not all of these are necessarily going to apply to you, but they're things to think about. So, think about leaving some time open in spring or summer for away rotations or for doing some research maybe. Some away rotations, like I mentioned, are going to mandate that you've completed all your required rotations before rotating with them. So if you've got a place that requires that and you have your heart set on going there, now is the time to start massaging your schedule to try and move required stuff earlier, because by the time we get to next spring, you're not going to be able to do that anymore. Consider taking time off to study for Step 2 CK, especially if you're not that happy with your Step 1 score or if you're going into something really competitive. Think a little bit about when you plan to actually work on your residency apps. It takes more time than you think. Scott was talking about how personal statements take a lot of time. Even just inputting data into ERAS takes a lot of time. One thing you can do now to kind of cut down on the amount of time you spend on that is creating your CV now, if you haven't already. What I basically did is sat down with a copy of my CV and typed stuff into my browser to get it into ERAS. You're recreating your CV. So the fact that I already had a CV meant that I just had to transfer information instead of trying to like comb back through my email and figure out when did I quit that job? Who was my supervisor? What were my actual responsibilities? I don't remember. So trying to do some of that legwork now is going to make things easier for you later on. Interview offer season, like I mentioned. No, I didn't mention. So interview offer season. Consider taking a rotation where you can get to your cell phone at all times. And this is more of an issue for people who are going into competitive specialties where they literally need to be able to respond to an email within 5 minutes or that interview is not available anymore. So if you're going into urology and you know when you're going to submit your urology application and you're going to be scrubbed in the OR for 8 hours a day for the 2 weeks after you submit your app, it's going to be problematic. So think about finding a more flexible rotation for that block of time. It's not a huge time period, but something to keep in mind. Alternatively, you can have your mom monitor your email or something. That works too. And then consider taking time off or doing a flexible rotation during your anticipated interview season. So that's that willow leaf. You don't necessarily have to take time off, but it's helpful, especially if you're going to be doing a lot of interviews. So if you're somebody who's applying to derm and you're going to try and interview at 30 places or whatever, all over the country, travel takes more time than you think. Flights are not at convenient times of day. You can't necessarily say, oh, well, I'm going to get done with my rotation at like 4:30 and then I'll just catch like a 6:30 flight and I'll be there and then I'll interview the next day and then I'll fly home and I'm only going to miss 1 day of my rotation. No, there's a dinner the night before that you need to be there for. There's not a flight that's going to get you there in time. There's not a flight out that you can get home in time. It's just, it ends up taking a lot more time and being a lot more complicated than you think. And you just can't take all that much time off of your rotations. It's rude. And you're not going to pass the rotation if you miss a lot of time. So especially if you're going to be interviewing a lot, think about either taking that time off or taking something that's going to be really flexible during that block. So, bottom line, what do I need to do now? This is it. Start asking for recommendation letters. Consider away rotations. Figure out ballpark when you plan to take Step 2. Massage your rotation schedule. And then the last thing I put on here is seek out clinical mentors. This is not something that I ever did. I always kind of figured like, oh, I'm going to meet an attending and we're going to hit it off and they're going to like, you know, be my mentor and I'm going to learn so much and it's going to be great. No. If you have somebody that you enjoy working with, that you feel like you would learn a lot from, that you just want to pick their brain about stuff, seek that out. It's not going to fall into your lap. It's not like, I don't know, the rotation version of a rom-com where like things just kind of fall together miraculously by the end and you have your soulmate of an advisor for life, right? Like it just doesn't work that way. Find those people and ask to work with them. Questions? Yeah. So most of my interview offers came within 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks maybe, of when I submitted my application. So I submitted a week after the deadline, the week after you could submit. So you could submit on September 15th. I submitted September 22nd, and I got most of my interview offers within the first 2 weeks. Almost all of them within 3 weeks. Other questions? Yeah. And internal medicine, both. I sent so I applied family medicine, internal medicine, and then there are 2 programs in the country that are actually combined IMFM, which I didn't realize until I was researching things on Frida, and I was like, oh my God, this is brilliant. So I ended up applying to a total of 33 programs, which is kind of obscene, but my goal was I want to be able to say that I'm going to do either family medicine or internal medicine. I'm not going to end up applying to both, but I haven't made up my mind yet, and I want to buy myself time. And in this case, time cost me probably about $250, but I felt like it was worth it. So in each one, then, I applied to 15 or 16. So in line with the numbers that Scott had. I feel like that was probably too many, even for one of those specialties. But for me, it meant peace of mind, and that was worth a couple $100. What other questions? Yeah. Yeah, Frida is a good place to start. It's an AMA, American Medical Association website, FREIDA. I don't know what it stands for. It's in all caps, so it must stand for something. But it's a fairly comprehensive list of pretty much every residency program in the country. The easiest way to sort things on Frida is geographically, and honestly, I feel like that's the easiest way to think about them too. Think about where you would want to live and then see what programs are there and whether you're interested in those programs. You can sort the data in other ways as well, like if you only want to go to an academic institution, or if you want to avoid academic institutions at all costs, or whatever. So there are other ways to look at that data, but I felt like, at least for me, sorting things geographically was easiest. Other questions? I know that was a lot of information. If you guys have questions that you come up with in the future, ask any 4th year. Honestly, we like to help. You're welcome to email me. My email is leex3147. leex3147. I'm happy to answer any questions, or if you have specialty-specific questions and you don't know who to go to, I can probably find a classmate to point you to. So, all right. Good luck, guys. Thanks for coming.